Story 1. I work in the medical field providing care in emergencies. The question, what's the worst thing you've seen, is challenging for me. The worst thing I've ever encountered gives me nightmares, and I prefer not to discuss it. Instead, please ask, what's the funniest thing you've found in someone's body? Story 2. What is the worst, scariest, or most disgusting thing you have ever seen? This question is posed to police officers, firefighters, or medics. They are being asked to recount perhaps the worst day of their lives for the entertainment of the person asking. Story 3. Certainly, it is very mild to ask younger people with gray hair if they dye it. It's salt and pepper. Do you really think I am dyeing individual hairs? Somehow, that seems more plausible than a person going gray early. I started going gray at 15, and I've been asked this many times. Story 4. I adopted my daughter through foster care when she was 12. Everything about our situation is private. If you need to know, either she or I will share information. There are many questions regarding what happened, the type of abuse, whether she has contact with her birth family, and concerns about her well-being. Story 5. Upon hearing about a medical diagnosis, some individuals may ask, "Did you even try?" and subsequently promote dubious remedies such as essential oils. Story 6. When I was young, it seemed okay to interact with a child. Your curly hair. Let me feel. A random stranger got too close and touched my hair. Is it real? The stranger tugged on my hair. Story 7. Asking Asian Americans, where are you really from? After they have already responded to your question is common. I am Asian American, born and raised in Nebraska. I am from Nebraska. If you are curious about where my grandparents immigrated from, that is different from where I am from. I get asked this question frequently. Story 8. Once, a guy asked why I am so quiet in front of everyone. He meant to be curious, but it felt rude. I am just shy. Story 9. I was asked if I gained weight today, which I found to be rude. I did gain weight. I'm not fat, but I am nourished, which was not the case the last time I saw the person. My weight gain is due to eating balanced meals in hopes of improving my reproductive health and stopping hair loss. It has worked. I am experiencing much less pain. However, it was still a very ignorant and offensive question. Story 10. As a blind person, I frequently encounter two ignorant questions. 1. How did you read the comment if you're blind? If you're blind, then how do you wipe yourself? Bonus statement. People stop me on the street to pray my blindness away. No joke. Story 11. Why don't your legs work? This question, or similar variations, often leads to discussions about how individuals came to use mobility devices or wheelchairs. Some people with disabilities may be comfortable discussing their experiences, while others may have been born with disabilities and have only known life in that context. Additionally, some individuals may still be coming to terms with what they consider to be the worst day of their lives. However, others often bring up this subject as if it were a casual conversation starter, akin to asking how someone got into their profession, hobby, or sport. Story 12. Asking cancer patients about their treatment. No, my wife didn't have clear margins after her surgery. She is still dying. Thank you for asking before she is even out of the hospital. Thank you for the reminder. Story 13. Most questions are about appearances, particularly weight. Please refrain from commenting or asking about it. Story 14. Asking a gay man about his favorite sex position can lead to surprising responses. Many people believe that asking if someone is the one who penetrates or is the one being penetrated is an appropriate workplace conversation. However, not every gay man enjoys anal sex. Inquiring about a transgender person's surgical history is also inappropriate. Not every transgender person is able or willing to undergo medical transition, and if you are not in an intimate relationship with them, it is not your concern. Story 15. I'm disabled. I get asked what happened all the time by every single Uber driver. Honestly, I should reply, first of all, what's the most traumatic thing that ever happened to you? Then they say, get well soon. Story 16. Asking parents of twins if the babies were conceived through in vitro fertilization is intrusive. How a couple's babies were conceived is the private matter of the couple alone. Mind your own business. Story 17. I bit more inappropriate, but when people say, if you enjoyed it, doesn't that mean you liked it? No, it doesn't. Story 18. I have a condition called idiopathic intracranial hypertension that affects the spinal fluid surrounding my brain and causes intense pressure on my brain, ears, and eyes. I am dealing with weeks-long migraines, tinnitus, and eyesight deterioration. It is also known as pseudotumor cerebri, and usually the first question I get is, but it's not a real tumor, so it can't be that bad, right? Story 19. In the UK, comments about accents or English ability towards people from other cultures or backgrounds, especially individuals from Eastern Europe or the Balkans, can be problematic. Phrases like, wow, your English is so good, particularly directed at someone who has lived in the country for years, can come across as patronizing and assume that the person is not fluent. Story 20. Why aren't you going on any vacation this summer? That sounds boring. Not everyone's dad is rich, and mine can't afford to take a tour of Europe like yours. Story 21. I have visible scars on my arm. Some look as you might expect, while a few do not. I often get asked, what happened to your arm? It's always awkward when I try to brush it off, and people say, no. But what happened? Pro tip: don't ask anyone about their scars. If you do and they brush it off or give a vague answer, don't push it. Story 22. I've been dealing with some skin issues due to my autoimmune condition. A few months ago, I had painful patches on my neck that I covered with band-aids and tried to hide with turtlenecks. It didn't help. Instead of asking if I was okay, people would comment on what was wrong with my neck, eye, or face. I eventually got so tired of it that I just replied, vampires, and walked away. Another comment I've heard throughout my life is, why do you talk so much? It really affects my self-esteem. Story 23. Asking a Korean, north or south? I understand that some people believe asking shows a connection or that they are aware of the situation, but it often feels more like they are signaling their ignorance. As an American, I feel tempted to ask white people, north or south, when they say they are American, just to see the confusion on their faces. Most North Koreans cannot leave their country. Those who do are only on official government business. You will not run into them at your local grocery store buying yogurt. The ones who escape North Korea typically flee to South Korea, where they are repatriated. Fun fact: both North and South Korea claim to be the only official Korea. So even if you met a North Korean defector, technically they are now South Koreans. China often sends them back, and in most places they are treated as lesser than even criminals. If I were a North Korean spy, the last thing I would say is, yes, I'm from the North, and everyone else is from South Korea, so unless I'm wearing a North Korean uniform, just assume I'm from the South. I have heard, well, I met a guy once, and he was a North Korean defector. Yes, he defected, meaning he's no longer from the North. So your question is still misguided. 99% of the time, the answer to that question is South Korean. If someone says North, they are either joking or you need to be concerned. Stop asking inappropriate questions. Story 24. Isn't everyone a little bit autistic or have obsessive-compulsive disorder? Some people simply don't understand how diagnostic criteria work. Story 25. But where are you really from? As a woman of color living in the United States, I receive this question frequently, and it frustrates me. Story 26. Questions that aim to expose a person's vulnerability include inquiries such as, what scares you the most? Or, what is your most embarrassing secret that you vowed to take to the grave because it could ruin your life? Why would I provide anyone with ammunition to use against me? What's next? Asking for my social security number and date of birth. Story 27. I have had acne my entire adult life. It is genetic. My mother had acne until the day she passed away. It is upsetting when people point it out or act as if they are dermatologists, as if I have not tried numerous solutions by now. Yes, Susan, I have acne. I believe my dermatologist is more qualified than you and your multi-level marketing products. Story 28. I see your When are you having kids? And are you pregnant? And were you trying to get pregnant? Which is a question a surprising number of people seem to have no problem asking. Story 29. Where are you from? I was born here. No, really, where are you from? I was born here. Okay, so where is your family from? Also here. Story 30. If I punch you, will your twin feel it? I watched too much G.I. Joe and asked a girl who had a twin. She looked at me and then told all her friends I was dumb. I walked away embarrassed. Story 31. Asking a pregnant woman who is your registered nurse taking care of you why her husband does not let her stay home and take care of the family instead of working. Story 32. Why are you a member of this demographic? I don't know, I was born autistic, and as far as I know, my gender and sexuality were also innate. Leave me alone. Story 33. I guess this was a little ignorant, but it was also pretty funny, and we both got a chuckle out of it. At one point early in our relationship, around 2014, my now husband and I resembled one another. When we went to the gym or exercised outside, we always wore basketball shorts and black t-shirts, ultimately causing us to dress basically the same. We didn't realize it at the time. However, looking back, jogging in a black cotton t-shirt in 90-degree weather was probably unwise. Anyway, we walked past a lady, and she turned to us and asked which one is older. We had no idea what she was talking about. Seeing how puzzled we looked, she asked again and then said, "You are brothers, aren't you? You look exactly alike. Which one's older?" She actually thought we were twins and wanted to know which one was the firstborn. It was so random but funny. What made it ironic was that I have a brother who looks nothing like me. Fast forward to 2025. This past February, I had to have oral surgery, but it was done at a hospital. It was chaotic. Long story short, the doctor said my husband was my father. As I was waking up from anesthesia, he was talking to me, and I was giddy as it was. He said, "That's right, you're here with your father." He must have thought I was crazy because I couldn't stop laughing. By the time I actually saw my husband, the anesthesia had worn off and I wasn't so giddy. Though I thought it was funny, I was no longer in the mood to tell him. I knew he would not be very happy. Story 34. I have been asked, "What are you?" I know they are inquiring about my ethnicity, but I find this question frustrating. Story 35. How much something costs you, a bathroom, a holiday, a car, etc., is not anyone else's concern. Story 36. Why did you want to end your life all those times? As someone who is very open on Reddit about my failed suicide attempts, being asked this sometimes feels ignorant and insensitive. All I can say for myself is that life is hard for some people. And when you constantly make mistakes and are aware of your own failures, you tend to blame yourself for everything, which can lead to suicidal thoughts. This is not necessarily true for everyone who has suicidal thoughts. It's just what goes on in my mind. Story 37. Asking people if they have a prenuptial agreement when finding out they just got married. A stranger asked us this on our honeymoon. Story 38. Asking about a feature or aspect of your body can make me feel insecure about certain traits. It bothers me that people often do not consider this, and it can be upsetting at times. Story 39. When I was dating a black woman, a lady in Target stopped us to say how great it was that we were together as an interracial couple. I quickly grabbed my girlfriend's arm and pulled her away before she could say anything. Story 40. Where are you and your parents from? And do you speak language? Are often directed at people of color. While some white individuals may also encounter these questions, many people of color find them intrusive, especially when they are not relevant to the conversation. It feels like a microaggression meant to distance the speaker from the person being asked, and it otherizes individuals who have grown up in predominantly white environments. As an adoptee, I frequently hear, "Do you speak Indian?" and "Do you know your other parents?" These invasive questions come from people who seem blissfully unaware that adoption often carries significant trauma for adoptees. They act as if they are entitled to any information about my exotic background to satisfy their own curiosity. Story 41. Are you identical twins? I am a female with a male twin brother. Obviously, we are not identical. That would be impossible. This question is ignorant but not offensive. Story 42. Questions like, "What are you?" when inquiring about someone's ethnicity are often intended harmlessly but can come across as dehumanizing. Story 43. How do you manage to not think about suicide in your condition? I would never be able to live like this. I do. It was constant when I first became disabled. Why would you ask anyone that? Story 44. You should try dating. Hey, it's not my choice. Nobody is interested even when I ask them first. Story 45. As someone who is currently unemployed, I cannot stand people who know about my situation asking about my job search. It's such an obvious question. If it were going well, I would be working right now. I know they mostly mean well, but being unemployed is mentally challenging, and it's the last thing I want to discuss when I am meeting with people I enjoy spending time with. Story 46. Have you tried taking cinnamon pills? You know, pharmaceutical companies do not want you to stop taking your insulin. It works for me. Well, Lisa, you are not a type 1 diabetic. Story 47. When people ask a mother why she does not breastfeed, there are many potential reasons, and none of them are your concern. Story 48. I was on a tour of a natural geological site with a group, and our tour leader had a prosthetic leg. She was fine and walked just like all of us. A man walked right up to her and asked how she lost her leg and thanked her for her service to the country loudly. She didn't roll her eyes, just looked up and took a deep breath. I lost my leg to cancer when I was 16. It has nothing to do with the military. I looked right at the man and said, "You had to ask that?" He turned red and stayed at the back of the group for the rest of the tour. I quietly apologized to the tour guide, and she said it happens on every tour. What is wrong with people? Story 49. I feel that asking about someone's sex life, gender, or identity without context can be rude. People will share their pronouns if the subject comes up. However, if you're asking personal questions out of curiosity, why does it matter? Comes across as uncomfortable and intrusive. Questions like, "Are you a man or a woman?" or "Who is the father or mother?" can feel demanding. I am not one of those people who discusses my sex life publicly. Just because others do so frequently doesn't mean I want to answer questions about it. Story 50. Being a foreigner who moved here 10 years ago and speaks perfect English, the question, "Where are you from?" feels strangely invasive to me. Story 51. I have facial tattoos to represent my indigenous heritage. I am often asked if I am a Viking. As a disabled person, I receive various questions about my disability. While I believe questions are better than assumptions, I would not approach a person I do not know to ask intrusive questions about their health. I will respond that I am blind, deaf, and have mobility difficulties. However, I may not go into detail. To be fair, many of the conditions I have are not well known. I had no knowledge prior to being diagnosed, so stating my exact diagnoses does not provide much clarity. Story 52. I have a sleeve of molecule tattoos on my arm, as I am a scientist, and I often have people ask which one represents cocaine, DMT, or methamphetamine. Each time, I have to resist the urge to react negatively. I've had a few moments of hearing loss due to this, and I think one person almost lost control. Assuming that my passion for science indicates a drug habit is offensive and an ignorant way to view others. I have spoken to other scientists with molecule tattoos, and they often receive the same question. Story 53. My brother and I are of different races, and people often ask me if he is my real brother. They also ask invasive questions about why we look different. Story 54. Asking a black woman if her hair is real. First of all, hair extensions and wigs are not exclusive to black women. Women of all races wear artificial hair, but somehow it's always black women who get stereotyped for it. Second, drawing attention to my appearance like that is uncomfortable and opens the door to conversations I probably do not want to have. Lastly, it's honestly just plain racist. Do you ask non-black women that question when they change their hairstyle? Or is this reserved just for us? I have shoulder-length locks now, but when I was younger, I used to wear my hair short and would sometimes get long braids. I will never forget a white girl loudly asking me if my hair was real in front of a whole room. I confronted her because people really do not realize how inappropriate that question is. Story 55. What's wrong? He can't tell you. He has a right to privacy just like you do. Also, how long is the wait? Story 56. Wait, you're not a lesbian? I am a tomboy, and it is annoying to have to answer these questions. I don't really talk about my personal life, but I never hit on women or check them out, so I have no idea why people think I'm a lesbian. I guess it's because I dress a bit boyish sometimes and have shorter hair, but that's just because I work a lot and prefer wearing jeans. Story 57. When are you going to ask them out? Or are you in love with them? You should consider dating them. No, I don't want to date them because I only see them as a friend, and they are not my type, so please leave me alone. Story 58. What race are you? I don't really mind, as most people are genuinely curious, but it's the usual follow-up of, oh, what? Are you sure? No, you don't look it. You look more. That really bothers me. Story 59. I have had a few people ask me if my transgender girlfriend has had any surgery or if she is on hormones. First, asking about someone else's genitals is inappropriate. Second, that information is her private medical information. Story 60. Not really in line with rude questions, but back when I was 20, I got caught up in heroin addiction for about a year. I turned my life around. Married, had children, and now have grandchildren. All very nice. When I began to turn my life around, I wanted to let a few close high school friends know. I remember 3 girls, not girlfriends specifically. The conversations went like this. Me. I have something I want to share with you about myself. Them. You're gay. Me. No. I'm a heroin addict. Maybe it was the 1970s, but I did man up my game a bit while kicking heroin and earning my degree. Story 61. Asking about someone's birth experience can be intrusive. Giving birth can be extremely traumatic for many reasons, and it is no one's business. Unless someone voluntarily shares that information, it is best to respect their privacy. There may be exceptions for close family members and friends, but that is up to the individual. No one is obligated to share their medical information. Story 62. Have you ever killed anyone? I don't talk about that with my wife, so why would I tell a stranger in a bar? Story 63. It's not particularly common, but if you could change the past, would you? Anyone with significant past trauma is likely to have an answer to that, possibly quite specific and detailed, and it's not something you want to hear in a job interview or icebreaker. Story 64. Why is there such an age gap between your children? Did you plan that? There were really traumatic miscarriages. Story 65. I spent time in some war zones, and I have had several people ask, what's the worst thing you saw? Story 66. Did you kill anyone? Is frequently asked of military veterans. Many of us find it incredibly offensive. Story 67. Not offensive but annoying. I am 6 feet 6 inches tall, so I am used to getting asked, how tall are you? Do you play basketball? Or, how's the weather up there? Some people also feel the need to comment, wow, you're tall, as if I wasn't already aware. Story 68. I'm Russian, and often people ask me if my father is in the mafia, if he is Vladimir Putin, or if I drink vodka daily. I understand that it's meant as a joke, but it's starting to irritate me. Story 69. I am somewhat ethnically ambiguous in appearance, with brown skin, Latina features, and lighter eyes. I often received questions like, what are you? And where are your parents from? From various people. Story 70. I am in a wheelchair. If you ask me why, I will not give an explanation because it is no one's business except mine and my doctor's. Story 71. Asking a gay couple who is the man or woman in the relationship is misleading. We are both women. If I choose to answer such a question, I might say, she drives and barbecues, while I empty the bin and use power tools. Story 72. I'm a transgender man. Please stop asking me about my anatomy or if I have had any surgeries. That is none of your business. You would not want anyone asking you about your body, so why is it okay to ask me because I am transgender? Story 73. I had a really great conversation with a guy. We talked until the early morning hours in a platonic manner. At one point, I mentioned that I am an atheist. I don't remember why. This was a long time ago. But knowing me, it was relevant, as I don't usually share this information randomly. He asked me, "How do you know right from wrong without God?" Story 74. Where did you go to school? In reference to me speaking about my mom, what about your dad? Oh, he died of a heroin overdose, and now my mom is married to a woman. Just casual talk, you know. Story 75. Are you married or do you have children? I feel that the type of work I do requires a woman to be married to be respected. There is a lot of pressure when answering this question, especially since no young person seems to be asking about uncertainty in today's world. However, we are somewhat forced to deal with every issue while needing to fulfill the duty of finding a partner to start a family. The second question is just as annoying. Honestly, I don't know what I will have for lunch tomorrow. Story 76. I've heard people ask if someone is pregnant, and that is such a silly question. Unless she says, "I am pregnant." I would never ask that of a random person. Story 77. Currently going on a lot of dates these days. How many people have you slept with? What's your body count? Story 78. My husband has a unique appearance with jet black, very curly hair and olive skin that is pale in winter and easily tan dark in summer. He has light eyes that resemble dark sunflowers in amber. He works in a job where he interacts with many clients daily. He often gets asked, "What are you?" which I find somewhat offensive, but he brushes it off. He has noticed that when he shares where he's from, everyone responds with, "Oh, that makes sense." I just don't understand how asking someone in that manner is considered acceptable. Story 79. Do you know your real parents? That's a question often directed to an adopted person. Yes, they are the ones who raised me. Are you referring to my birth parents? Story 80. I was in hair and makeup for an extras role in a small Netflix film and got chatting with the makeup artist. I asked, "Who was the most famous person you've done makeup for?" She jokingly replied, "Oh, I was beginning to like you." It was obviously a giveaway that I wasn't in the industry. Story 81. As the parent of a special needs child, there are numerous challenges. However, it is often not what you ask but how you ask it that matters. Story 82. As a bald woman, I need people to understand that asking if I have cancer or suggesting remedies like minoxidil comes off as more rude than you might think. No, essential oils are not going to fix a harmless genetic issue. Story 83. But where are you from? When you detect an accent, it can be a little rude to ask where the person is from, but it is even more insulting to not accept the answer they give you. If they say, "I moved here from Arkansas," it might be because they did not want to say, "I'm from Afghanistan," knowing that you may react strangely about it. Story 84. So if I flicker the lights on and off, are you going to have a seizure? There are often comments about lights and my epilepsy. The common perception is that it is triggered by light and strobing, but most people with epilepsy are not photosensitive. Only about 3% of individuals with epilepsy experience this sensitivity, but media portrayals can make it seem like a much more significant issue for our community. For those who do suffer from it, it is extremely challenging. However, I personally do not experience this sensitivity. Story 85. I have been asked why I don't speak like an Asian. In the Netherlands, there is a stereotype that Asian people cannot properly pronounce the R sound. I have also been told that I can't be partially Chinese. Why? Because Chinese people have a yellowish glow, and I was not yellow enough to be considered Chinese. Story 86. Are you American? I am Canadian. I've learned not to ask if someone is American, Russian, or German. It is better to ask if they are Canadian, Ukrainian, or Dutch. Story 87. Asking why you do not talk to your parents about your experiences of child abuse. I used to shy away from it, but now I say, because they were abusive. Sometimes I hear the comment, "Well, they were doing the best they could. They didn't have good childhoods themselves." Story 88. Why didn't you fight back more and get him off of you? My aunt spoke to me. Forget you. Story 89. Do you ever let him fly freely? Does he get jealous when he sees other birds being free? To me, as a falconer, no, he is tied up at all times and has to watch documentaries about bird migration while I play sad songs on my violin. It gets annoying because it happens so often. Yes, he flies every day unless it's raining or storming. No, that screeching is not because he is crying when he sees his fellow birds soar freely above him. He is mad because they are in his territory, and he wants them to leave. I am holding him back because he will go after them and start a fight that will end with another €400 veterinary bill. Story 90. For me, it was people asking for details when my daughter took her own life. They became offended when I didn't share them. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.